Hey everyone, welcome back. And you already know what time it is. I really should start shooting other videos again just because I feel like I need some diversity on the channel. And I do have some other ones in the pipeline, so maybe I'll shoot some of those this weekend. But that's not what today is for. Today is for Wish I Had Today episode 9 and the recap of that episode. This one was really good. It was effectively like as far as I could tell, a 1-to-1 adaptation of chapters 14 and 15. So it was solid around there. Like there were definitely some things that I was like, okay, like the manga definitely portrayed some emotions a little bit better, but like otherwise, adaptation wise, very solid episode. So without further ado, let's just get into the recap and talk about it a little bit. Okay, so the episode basically starts off right where the last one left off, or like close to it essentially, where you have Tarta kind of like looking at Nolnoa interacting with another customer in their shop, and kind of wondering about why Nolnoa doesn't have any sort of recollection of the very noticeable and bright flash that he had seen the other day that caused him to knock over all like the magical pigments and stuff. And he's kind of like, there's no way he could have missed that. Like, there's no way anyone could have missed that. And he's wondering to himself, like, maybe Qifrey knows something because he was the only other one there other than Coco, who would have seen the Flash, and he was in the room with Nono as well. So like maybe he knows what was up with that. And then we hard cut to Qifrey, who is essentially on a hill in the countryside near the Atelier, just standing in the wind with his hand in his hair, trying to aura farm. It doesn't work out because literally the man was aura farming for about 2 seconds, and then a tree flies into his back and hits him and knocks him over, which this is funny for several reasons. The funniest of which, in my opinion, being the fact that, or at least without getting into any spoilers exactly, but the funniest of which in this episode is that he kind of does try and do things multiple times this episode and kind of flop and fail a little bit, but so this is just the start of his woes this episode, to be honest, and so he had a rough one. But basically the reason this happened is because Coco and the others are out practicing using spells, and Coco drew her gathering spell just a little bit too big, and it pulled the entire like small tree out of the ground and into Kiefer's back and knocked him over. And then we have Tetsuya, giving her some pointers on how to draw the gathering spell in a way that like doesn't pull the wind like directly essentially, but like twist it so that she can like pull the fruit off of the tree, which is what she was aiming for. She wasn't aiming to pull a small tree out of the ground with her seal. She was just trying to get a fruit basically, because she'd drawn it too small earlier, and it was a nice breeze to the tree essentially. And that's all happening there. She's giving her a Coco pointers, and she's talking about like practicing it over and over again, but it's not just about practicing over and over again. It's about like practicing and understanding like why when you get something right, why it's right, and understanding like when something goes wrong, what can you do to change it, like what is wrong with it, which is a big theme in the story, is understanding why things work the way they do, why things are the way they are, and I feel like that's something that has larger implications for so much in the series, I think. So it's really funny that even in the girls' teachings and like learning, basically, this is kind of a core part of their lesson. But she's doing a great job and is eventually called great job, Professor Tetsuya, and she gets really excited about this because it's Tetsuya. Tetsuya is super excitable about a lot of stuff. Then we have Agat, who is allowed to aura farm at any point, who is off to the side on like a different kind of small hill, who uses the gathering spell to pull a fruit a pretty even farther distance, and is like, you guys should be playing around, you guys should be practicing, like if you know that you should be working on your spells and stuff. And Coco and Tetsuya are like, oh my gosh, you should teach us then, and like go over to her and like start like messing with her. And she gets very bashful about that because again, not really good with attention or affection at all. But I think it's funny that they do allow Agat to aura farm, and basically she does this multiple times this episode where like she does that, and then she's like, when they're sitting in a group later, she's like sitting off to the side by herself. And I know she's not doing it on purpose. She's just like that, but it's just funny to see like everyone else kind of like sitting in like more like a group setting, and then there she is off to the side by herself, or like just in her own world. But like that's my daughter, so I love her very much. But then we basically get like an overview of the 5 tests essentially that you need to take to become a fully fledged witch, or like the 5 tests that you need to take essentially, 4 of which you need to become a fully fledged witch, and the 5th of which you need to actually be able to teach witches of your own, or like be a master and take apprentices essentially. And there's a nice world building there with why these tests exist, why they're structured the way they are. Essentially the 3 whys, like way back when the original 3 whys were like, this is like it's great to like have us learn magic and stuff, and magic is for like people, but like you should enjoy learning, and so the tests are kind of meant to both push ingenuity but also be a little bit kind of enjoyable, a little bit of an adventure, so people kind of like aren't just like in the books doing magic every day all day long. So that's kind of like why the tests are structured the way they are, as like more of like almost small adventures. Like we've seen test one in Deadly Range that Coco completed in episode, what was that, 3 I think, or yeah, that was 3. But yeah, so we've seen that these tests are kind of like adventures in their own right. And essentially you can also challenge the tower of books, where like that's where Coco's trying to get after the third test. So Coco hears this and is like, oh my gosh, like finishing that third test, I'll be able to like challenge the tower and like be able to get in there and maybe find a spell to save my mom and whatnot, maybe find the answers I'm looking for. And Tetsuya kind of is talking about as well as like because Qifrey's like, you don't have to decide all this stuff like now, obviously, like focus on learning, and then you can focus on what you want to do after you've taken the fourth test and after you've graduated and everything. And Tetsuya's like, oh, I already know what I want to do. I want to travel the world. I want to meet tons of people. I want to help people. I want to share magic. And then I want to like make like my own custom like witch cap that has like two horns on it to match her pigtails, which again, very silly girl. We love Tetsuya, arguably the sunshine in the Atelier, if we're being honest, because a lot of the other girls are traumatized to some extent. But she's very excited about her future and what that means. Rish is very much not excited about this because she hates tests. She hates being told by adults and other people what she can draw, what magic is supposed to be. So she just kind of walks away. She's like, I'm not dealing with that. I don't want you to deal with that at all. And as she's walking away, Aga's like, if you don't actually learn these things, you're just gonna be able to only draw the magic you want to draw, and not the magic that like you're missing out on so many other spells. And she's like, and Rish is like, that's fine. I don't really care. Like I just want to be able to do what I want to do. And Aga has her own mission, essentially trying to become a librarian at the tower, because that's kind of like her family's whole thing. Like they're descended from one of the disciples of the Three Wise, so they've been librarians in that tower for generations, basically. So that's another thing that's weighing on her, obviously being the black sheep of her family, and then also the fact that like being the outcast, she's trying to prove herself essentially. So like if she's thinking if she can like become a librarian or like be able to get into the tower, it'll rectify whatever actually happened in the past for her, which hasn't really been revealed yet at this point in the anime. So yeah, but that's kind of like her driving force, the thing that makes her so bent on taking these tests and completing them as quickly as possible. And Coco kind of feels like her path is set in stone when Tetsuya asks like, oh, what do you want to do? Because she is obviously there to save her mom. That's what she wants to do. She wants to get her mom out of being petrified. So she's like, I just feel like my path is set in stone, but I do really still want to like spend my time learning a ton of magic, practicing these spells, getting good at them. And that's kind of like her motivation. She wants to just experience magic and eventually be able to save her mom. The girls are kind of like playing around, running around, and Qifrey's like, remarking to himself about how like drawing repeatedly will kind of like give them the ability to remember, and that will give them knowledge, and that knowledge will be strength that no one can take away from them, which is another kind of like, it's interesting considering how it's always been interesting considering how the memory spell works, obviously, the memory erasure spell, and how we've seen it used or attempted to be used, at least in the series so far, and used to on Nonoa, and then also how it's used at later points in the manga as well, like what that can do to someone. So that sense of like it can never be taken away, I don't know about that, but it is kind of like harping on that point that like knowledge is power, like knowing things is what protects you, what makes you strong, essentially. So that is a point that I've always really liked as well. So I mean that the day passes pretty nicely because they're just learning stuff, but we do get this really well animated nightmare sequence, which is really well drawn in the manga. But I really enjoyed seeing how they animated it, where Coco is basically walking through this world where it's kind of like ink on like the water. I guess you could call it water, but it's like ink basically. She's hearing all these voices. Like she sees her mom. Her mom is like blaming her. I got blaming her for things. She's trapped in an ink bottle. She's like face to face with Igwin. All this sort of stuff. All this really scary stuff in her nightmare world. And essentially, she wakes up from that. As Igwin is saying, it's all her fault that the world is going to be destroyed, or like basically rewritten and changed around essentially. As she's basically trapped in an ink bottle. And she wakes up from this and is like not happy. Obviously, cold sweat, can't go back to sleep. And she decides to just go practice. Which, by the way, when she wakes up, Brush Buddy is there to snuggle her hand. Which we love Brush Buddy. Brush Buddy is the greatest character in the series, if we're being honest. I'm sorry, like you are my favorite character, but Brush Buddy does come above you just a little bit. Um, but yeah, she then just kind of goes to practice because she cannot bring herself to sleep again. Meanwhile, downstairs, you've got Qifrey kind of like he's about to do something, and then Aga walks up and he's like, oh, he's very shocked that she's even still awake because she should be asleep, but she was up practicing spells because that's what she does. And she's kind of like, yeah, I wish the day was longer, but oh well, I'm gonna take myself to bed. So she goes upstairs to like go to sleep, and she kind of sees Coco still awake, and she's like, you're still awake? And Coco's like, yeah, I couldn't sleep. And then Coco's kind of like, lamenting the fact that she needs to work harder and needs to practice more to be able to save her mom, and just worried about how much she'll actually be able to like will she be able to learn enough to save her mother, essentially. And that basically keeps her from sleeping for the rest of the night because she is just going to continue drawing. Meanwhile, Qifrey at this point, we have his second attempt at doing anything this episode, which he is going to essentially try and get the seal out of that is engraved on a medallion inside this bottle, this twin bottle. So he seals off the area he's in, essentially to conceal what he's doing, but I'm assuming also to kind of like protect the rest of the house a little bit in case anything goes wrong. And he's like, okay, we're gonna break the bottle, and he's kind of like talking about how it's such a cool spell because we get some lore here that this is a spell that essentially medical witches used to have in order to share their concoctions, their medicines across like long distances between two bottles, so they would always have supplies or like wherever they were going. But it was outlawed by the pact essentially, and the spell effectively was erased, nullified, done away with when all their memories were erased. And he's kind of like, wow, it's a shame that something so beautiful can only be created by brim hats at this point. So he's like, okay, well, that's whatever. I can like get this medallion out of here and put it in a magic compass, and it will lead me to the brim hats. Very simple plan, obviously, right? Shouldn't go wrong at any point. However, of course, it doesn't go that way because this is Igwin we're dealing with here. So as a lot of people come to learn, Igwin is thinking multiple steps ahead. So obviously, you would plan for the discovery of your twin bottle and then, have some sort of contingency for that. So Qifrey's trying to take this thing out of the bottle, and he gets struck by lightning because that's one of the contingency plans, and that makes him drop the bottle, which then starts shooting out a ton of water into the enclosed space he's in, and effectively nearly drowns him to a point. Like he is just having a terrible day essentially, and it's not great. And then to top it all off, Igwin appears using their teleportation spell and is floating above Qifrey, takes the medallion, crushes the bottle in their hand, and then teleports away before Qifrey can even really do anything. He made an attempt, but obviously, Igwin already thought of that, so thought of somebody making an attempt at doing that. And Igwin then, after taking the medallions, he teleports back to where they were previously in the last episode, and it seems a little annoyed. It's really funny because Qifrey is very much like distraught in a sense that the one kind of like lead he had is now gone, and it was taken from him like literally in his face by Igwin, who again another character who is allowed to aura farm and not be disrupted, and Igwin is kind of annoyed by the fact that they went through all this effort to give Coco this bottle, and it was discovered and basically almost let it back to them. So they were like, oh, well, that's just that, and they teleport away again. Which, by the way, I love seeing Igwin's teleportation magic animated as well. Like, it's cool in the manga, but it's also really cool just seeing how like light and like and how it appears like smoke. Because like trying to catch Igwin is like trying to catch smoke. Like it's hard. Okay, it's gonna be really difficult. But essentially the next morning, Coco is exhausted and Qifrey's exhausted, and they're yawning at the same time, and they're basically getting scolded by the others, like, hey, so you need to sleep because you can't make good spells if you're tired, you can't learn if you're tired and stuff like that. And they kind of offer to make tea, and then Qifrey's like, no, I will make the tea, but obviously he's still numb from being electrocuted last night, so he drops all the stuff, and then has to go and try and get some more tea leaves because that's just how it goes for him. And you know, he's leaving, and Coco's like, actually, I can I talk to you as well? And they go there, and Coco returns. I got Sylph shoes to her. Finally, after all this time, it's part of the reason she was up late last night trying to figure out how to draw these things. Um, and you know, Aga can't really understand why Coco is acting this way because like from Aga's perspective, it's like I've been mean to you. I put you in a very dangerous situation by like forcing you to take a test when you were clearly not ready. Like, am I the only? And it's funny because she's like, am I the only one who's been thinking about this entire time or worried about this entire time? I'm like, yes, you. It's just been you because Coco is just that nice. But Coco is kind of like, yeah, you know, it was a little mean, but like at the end of the day, while I was scared, I did choose to take the test myself because I wanted to prove to myself and to everyone that I could do it and that I could kind of like do this sort of thing with my own hands. Which also kind of shows who she is. Like Coco's not someone who's gonna like get hit by insurmountable odds and back down. Coco's the type of character who something challenging appears in front of her, and whether it's safe or the best decision or not, she's gonna go at it and try and figure it out, which is really great. But then she passes out because obviously she's just been under a lot of stress between the nightmare and everything that's happened to her, and staying up last night. So she's knocked out. Meanwhile, Qifrey is munching on some herbs outside to alleviate his numbness, which Brush Buddy is mimicking him munching on these herbs, and I want to point out that Brush Buddy, in addition to everyone else loving Brush Buddy, the animation team also clearly loves him because, and there was an interview I think recently where they were like, yeah, you know, like the animators have just been sneaking in little Brush Buddy kind of like Easter eggs or like things that he does whenever he's in a scene, or just adding him in there. And I'm like, you know what? Good on them, because more Brush Buddy content's always good. But you know, Brush Buddy is with Qifrey faking chewing stuff, being annoyed when Qifrey calls him like I forget what the name was, but calling him a name that he doesn't like, and you know, just kind of there. But then I got flies into Qifrey at an incredible speed because and it's a really funny shot. Like she was zooming to Qifrey after Coco passed out, but it was also partially because when Coco drew these Sylph shoes, the lines were a little bit too long, and so they were off balance, and so she effectively made like turbocharged Sylph shoes that make you go faster. And Kiefer's like, oh wow, can I see it? And Aka's like, no, now's not the time. Coco passed out. You need to take her to the hospital. Qifrey then, you know, gets this, like, this really cool wooden board thing, which I was excited. I love the motion as well, the way that's animated, as he like puts Coco on this wooden board and essentially like takes her to town in order to take her to the hospital. Yeah, that was really, it was really smooth motion. Like it was really good, but like it's a thing. So like obviously he has to take her to the hospital to deal with whatever's happening to her. Meanwhile, I have Tarta also in town playing with some non-witch kids, and it's getting late, so he's like, okay, I'm gonna go home. I need to take like the last ferry. And they're all like, you're a witch, why don't you just fly home? And Tarta's like, you know, there are rules of this sort of thing. I can't do that, so I have to take the ferry. Because obviously he can't explain to these kids that actually my eyes are, I have silver wash eyes, and because of that I'm not allowed to be a witch, so I have to take the ferry, so I can't draw stuff on my shoes and like fly, and I can't, you know, he wouldn't say anything about drawing either because you don't want to tell them that. And he kind of like laments that, like, you know, he's a little annoyed that like people who don't know anything kind of like talk about the situation he's in and like are a little like confused by it, but he is a little envious of like how they can just kind of speak their mind. And I do feel for him because he's kind of trapped in this weird middle area where he's like, he is a witch by birth essentially, but he's not allowed to learn anything, so he's effectively like a normal person, but also not a normal person because he has all this knowledge that they don't have, which estranges him. It estranges him from them essentially, which is kind of really sad. So like he's kind of like in a weird outcasted space there. But you know, as he's heading to the ferry, he runs into Qifrey, who is carrying Coco, and Kiefer's like, "Oh my god, where's the hospital?" And he's like, "Oh, it's over here." So he leads Qifrey to the hospital. They put Coco in the back basically, and Kiefer's like, "You know, thanks for helping us out. Like, you keep such a close eye on things. You do such a great job with that." And this kind of like makes Tarta like go like and then decide to ask Qifrey a question, and that's kind of where the episode ends. And I will say this was the one point in the episode where I was kind of like, you know, I wish they had like done a better job showing Tarta's expression here, like because I feel like in the manga you get the feeling that he's not. It's a little bit, he has a little bit of a darker look on his face, or a little bit more of a displeased look on his face when he's talking to Qifrey, in my opinion. But other than that, very solid episode. There weren't really any differences between this and the manga. Just really nice seeing everything animated. And yeah, it was a really solid episode this week, effectively 1-to-1. And again, we're rapidly approaching the end. Like I said, this is chapter 15 where this ends off on, and this was episode 9. So we are getting to the end, which is episode 13, really quick. All right, and that's this week's recap done. Like I said, I am going to actually shoot other stuff or talk about other things. Because I write out notes for this one. It takes a little bit more time, and I should start writing out notes for the other ones as well. Because I've noticed since I've written out notes for a couple of the other videos. Those just tend to be easier to one get through, but also just kind of like talk through the things. But that takes time. So thanks for watching this recap. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want more of them. And there will be other videos coming down the pipeline that aren't Atelier related, I promise. But until then, I will see you next time.